Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into 5 massive predictions made by the Flat Earth movement that completely, absolutely failed to materialize when put to the test. Now, over the years, we've all seen a ton of observations and questions raised by this community. But what we're looking at today aren't just questions. We're talking about firm, highly confident predictions made about the future. And let's be real, some of these ideas, to put it incredibly mildly, have aged like milk on a dashboard in the sun. It's one thing to throw a hypothesis out there, but it is an entirely different ballgame to say, this specific event is absolutely going to happen, and then just watch as the deadline completely sails right by. So what actually happens when we put these claims to the test? Because in science, it's pretty simple. A true claim absolutely must withstand the scrutiny of a testable prediction. An event either happens or it doesn't. Today, we're counting down 5 of the biggest predictions that simply never happened. Kicking off our countdown at number 5, Artemis will fail. You know, for years, we kept hearing that NASA's Artemis mission was just going to quietly disappear. But instead, we literally watched the goalposts shift further and further away with every single successful milestone. First, the claim was it wouldn't even launch. Then, okay, it won't reach orbit. Then, it won't reach the moon. And finally, there's no way it'll safely return. I mean, at this rate, the goalposts have traveled further into space than the spacecraft itself. When you stack the initial predictions up against reality, the contrast is just stark. Artemis 1 successfully launched. The Orion spacecraft traveled all the way around the moon and safely returned to Earth. The mission objectives were completely achieved, and Artemis 2 is moving forward right now as a massive success. Now, do space missions experience delays? Of course they do. We saw that with Apollo, the Space Shuttle, the James Webb Telescope. If you're strapping hardware and people to a rocket, you kind of want to get it right. That isn't evidence of some grand deception. It's just evidence that building rockets is genuinely hard. The predicted total failure, it just never materialized. Moving right along to prediction number 4. The dome will be found. So, for years, we've heard this claim that physical evidence of a giant dome enclosing the Earth is literally just around the corner. If you follow this topic, you know we first need to define the firmament, or the dome. Depending on who you ask, it's described as a literal physical ceiling or a giant solid barrier suspended right above us. And believers were so confident predicting that rockets would eventually hit it, or that undeniable hard proof of its existence would finally be uncovered. But here's the kicker. Humanity has launched literally thousands and thousands of rockets over the decades. Not a dozen, thousands. If a massive, physical, solid barrier actually surrounded the Earth, trust me, it wouldn't be subtle. We'd have seen a massive impact event. We'd be tracking shattered debris. Instead, our tech has improved so much that we don't just launch rockets, we track them in real time, we film them, and we talk to spacecraft that are billions of kilometers away. And not a single one has ever bumped into a dome. So without any physical proof, historical events often get totally twisted to fit the narrative. Take Operation Fishbowl. You'll hear claims that this was a top-secret government mission to nuke the dome and break through. But the reality? These were high-altitude nuclear tests during the Cold War to study atmospheric effects. The results were openly published. Nobody was attacking a glass ceiling. It was just atmospheric science at work. Coming in at number 3, NASA will be exposed. For decades, literally decades, we've been hearing this super bold claim that NASA's lies are unraveling, the walls are closing in, and the whole agency is just days away from total collapse. We're always told the truth is just around the corner. But think about this logically for a second. If NASA were actually running the greatest deception in the history of mankind, the evidence would get stronger over time, right? With hundreds of thousands of employees, you'd expect a massive flood of whistleblowers, leaked files, undeniable proof. Instead, we just see highly successful, ongoing projects like the ISS, Mars rovers, and deep space probes. Look, you can criticize NASA's budget all you want. Science welcomes the scrutiny. But claiming the entire organization is totally faking space, that requires a burden of proof that has quite simply never been met. Plus, and this is a huge detail that often gets totally swept under the rug, NASA is not the only player in the game. There are several massive space agencies all over the world. Even if NASA magically vanished tomorrow morning, all these independent international agencies are still launching things into space, gathering data, and independently proving the globe model every single day. Down to prediction number 2, Flat Earth goes mainstream. Let's cast our minds back to the mid-2010s. The movement was blowing up online, and prominent voices predicted it was on the verge of this huge mainstream awakening. And yeah, it absolutely grew online. It racked up millions of views and became a massive part of internet culture. Documentaries dropped, scientists debated it, but check out this quote. The actual expectation was that by 2026, we'd literally be sitting in high school geography classes debating the exact height of the ice wall. But when we snap back to mainstream reality, it's a very different story. There is a huge gap between internet notoriety and actual scientific consensus. As you can see right here, every single scientific discipline and practical profession that actually relies on the shape of the Earth still uses the globe. Schools teach it, meteorologists forecast weather with it, navigators chart their courses on it, and space agencies launch missions based entirely on it. That mainstream awakening, it just never happened. And finally, taking the #1 spot, a working flat Earth map. This right here is widely considered the absolute biggest failed prediction in the modern history of the movement. I mean, it's pretty foundational, right? A map isn't just some minor detail or a fun accessory. It is the absolute baseline required to explain physical reality. You simply cannot propose a brand new model of reality if you literally can't draw it in a way that matches what we observe every day. A true working map has to carry a massive burden of proof. It can't just get one or two things right. It has to accurately predict and explain all of these real-world phenomena at the exact same time. It has to map out Southern Hemisphere flights, like how a flight from Sydney to Santiago takes about 14 hours, not the 30-plus hours a flat map would logically force it to be. It has to perfectly match shipping distances. It needs to explain the seasons, the mechanics of eclipses, and the precise position of the stars, all at once. The promise was always that a definitive, unifying map was coming to settle the debate once and for all. But the reality? Decades later, we just have dozens of competing, entirely contradictory maps. They don't agree with each other. They literally cannot all be true at the same time. And most importantly, they completely break down when tested against the basic real-world measurements we just talked about. So to wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this one fundamental question. If we go all the way back to our starting premise, that true scientific claims absolutely must withstand the scrutiny of testable predictions, what does the permanent absence of a working map actually tell us about the model itself? When the most basic foundational prediction of what our world even looks like never materializes, perhaps the model was never real to begin with. Thanks for hanging out with us for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.